All right, let's dive right in. We're tackling a massive question today. What really, truly separates artificial intelligence from the human brain? We're going to explore this based on an analysis by Homeira Oroujzadeh, looking at two completely different paths to intelligence. One is all about massive scale, and the other is about incredible, subtle efficiency.
So you know how it is in the world of AI, right? The race is on, and the mantra seems to be bigger is better. More power, more data, bigger models. We're told that's the path to progress. But when we're talking about creating true intelligence, is that really the whole story?
Well, that very assumption actually has a name. It's called the scaling hypothesis, and it is, without a doubt, the dominant idea pushing AI development forward right now. The thinking is pretty straightforward. Just keep scaling everything up. The computers, the data, the parameters, and eventually, boom, we'll hit artificial general intelligence, or AGI.
Okay, so let's dig into that first approach, starting with AI. The source material for this explainer calls this the quantity paradigm, and honestly, that's a perfect description for the AI that powers so much of our world today.
So how does it learn? Well, at its heart, it's all about brute force mathematics. There are these things called scaling laws that pretty much prove if you throw more data and more power at it, its performance gets better. But, and this is a big but, this approach has some real weak spots. These systems can get kind of brittle, they can break when they see something totally new or unexpected. And of course, they famously lack that basic, human-like common sense.
Here's a really great analogy to make this stick. Think of AI's approach like building a skyscraper. It's an absolute marvel of engineering, right? It's meticulously planned, built piece by piece from a human-made blueprint. It's powerful, it's impressive, but at the end of the day, it's always going to be limited by that original design.
And the cost of building that AI skyscraper, well, it's just immense. We're talking about energy. To get an AI to match the computational power of just one human brain, current models would need megawatts of power. That's enough to light up a small city. Just tuck that number away for a minute because the contrast we're about to see is absolutely staggering.
All right, now let's pivot. Let's look at a completely different model for intelligence. If AI is all about quantity, the human brain is the poster child for quality.
The brain, it just plays by a totally different set of rules. For starters, it is unbelievably efficient with energy. And its thinking process, it's not just a simple matter of neurons firing. No, it's this incredibly complex dance that involves all sorts of other support cells and structures. But the real game changer, the most important part, is plasticity. The brain literally rewires itself as it learns from experience. And that right there, that's the basis for real adaptation, for genuine creativity.
So let's go back to our analogy. If AI is that engineered skyscraper, the brain is like a tree. It isn't built from some external blueprint, it grows. It's this complex, living, adaptive system that organizes itself from the inside out, always changing and responding to the world around it.
Okay, remember that number I told you to keep in mind? The megawatts of power for AI? Get this. The human brain does everything it does, all those incredible, creative, complex feats using about 20 watts. That's less power than a dim light bulb. This is not just some fun fact. It's a massive clue that we're looking at two fundamentally different operating systems here.
So let's just lay it all out, side by side. You've got AI on one side, brute force computation built and engineered, learning by just piling up more and more data. And then you have the brain on the other side, subtle, incredible efficiency, self-organized and grown, learning through actual, dynamic, physical change. I mean, these are just two completely different philosophies for achieving intelligence.
And it's this huge contrast that leads the author of this analysis, Homeira Oroujzadeh, to take a really fascinating philosophical turn. We're moving beyond just the tech specs now and into a much deeper, almost metaphysical reflection on what this all really means.
Her whole argument really hinges on this one core idea. She suggests that for something as incredibly complex and efficient as the brain to exist, the plan, the information, the purpose of it all had to come before the physical thing itself.
And from that idea, she builds what she calls an argument for wise design. It's based on three main points. First, there's irreducible complexity. The argument here is that even a single neuron is like a molecular supercomputer. It's just too complex to be an accident. Second is what she calls intrinsic wisdom, this idea that billions of neurons somehow work together perfectly without any central boss telling them what to do. And the third pillar, the big one, the problem of consciousness.
that subjective I am here feeling that science still can't quite get its head around.
So, putting all of that together, the author arrives at a theological conclusion. And her view is that consciousness isn't something you can engineer or code. She proposes it's something non-material. A divinely infused spirit is the phrase she uses. And if that's the case, then it's something that Silicon could never, ever replicate.
So what are we left with? Well, we have these two totally different paths, the constructed path of AI and the created path of the brain. And both of them, in their own way, force us to stare right at this huge central mystery of what intelligence even is.
The author's final thought really brings it all home. She frames it this way. AI, with all of its incredible power, shows our absolute mastery of construction. But the brain represents the sheer wonder of creation. It's a system so elegant, so efficient, that it just leaves you in awe.
And that leaves us with one last, really profound question that this analysis poses. What if AI's real purpose isn't to become us? What if its greatest gift is to show us the limits of what we can construct, and in doing so, help us finally appreciate the true wonder of creation? What if it's here to show us just how miraculous our own minds have been all along? A fascinating thought to chew on. Thanks for joining me.